Before we get into today's episode, we have some exciting news for you guys. On June 13th through the 15th, 2019, the Liberland in Africa Summit will be taking place in beautiful Uganda. The venue hosting the event is the Lake Victoria Serena Golf Resort and Spa, and we are going to put a link to more information in the show notes. Go ahead and check that out. And if you can make it, please attend because this is going to be a very exciting event, and I know we are all really looking forward to it. Hello, and welcome to episode 30 of the Liberland Show. I'm your host, Adam J. Carswell. Today we are joined by John Louis O'Connor. Louis, as he goes by, is the General Consul of Panama. Louis, thank you for being on the show today, and do you have any opening remarks for our listeners?
Well, thank you, Adam. Good to chat with you. And let's go in. A lot of good things to say about Panama, Liberland, and it's good to meet you and invite you down here. I'm sure you'll come visit us one day soon.
Yeah, definitely. You were telling me before the call a lot about some of the perks of living in Panama and what you've really grown to enjoy since moving there. I guess before we get into Liberland, tell us about Panama. Tell us about what it is that you like there. I'm sure the weather is obviously beautiful, but tell us about it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think, everybody has their own story, their own sort of unique story and upbringing and environment and stuff. So I think one of the big attractions that has sort of attracted me to both Liberland and Panama would be probably based on my upbringing. I grew up in Dublin at a time. I mean, even still today, like it's quite a small island, and we've a border between the north of Ireland and the south of Ireland. So, and at the time, we had a very sort of a violent, vicious sort of a sectarian war going on between what was considered to be Catholic versus Protestant, but actually it was more about what allegiance. For Catholics would have been sort of loyal to Ireland and the Irish Republic, and Protestants would have been more Northern Ireland and felt they were British. So from a very young age, I just got this very sort of strange feeling that one, these people are crazy, and two, what does a border mean? Half the people don't recognize it on one side and the other half don't recognize it on the other. So from quite young, I was always sort of a bit skeptical about governments and people drawing lines on maps and stuff like that. So I never took it too serious in a way. I realized that, a border is very flexible, and what we call, like Northern Ireland was considered, it depends on who you spoke to, right? One person would say it was part of Great Britain. Another person would say it's in the Republic of Ireland. It's in the same place all the time, right? So, funny enough then, because of the political situation, I left quite early. I went away and to live in what was West Germany. And of course, at that time, you had West Germany and East Germany. And not long after I went there, the wall came down, and then all of a sudden it was Germany again. And I used to live close to the French border in Saarbrücken. I used to go to France maybe for a drive and getting to know the history of the area. I met a guy one time. He was telling me like his family have lived in the same house for the last 120 years, but the house has been in 3 different countries in the last 60 years. It was in France between World War I and World War II. The border kept changing, So I've always sort of had a sort of a skewed sort of a sense of humor type of approach about governments and countries, And I think in a way, when even though sometimes we don't know what we're searching for, I think we can be drawn to places and drawn to people that are sort of like-minded and going in the same direction we want to go. So I wanted to get out of Europe then, and I came to Panama as far back as 1994, and I traveled around Central America, Colombia, which you weren't supposed to do at the time, but it was perfectly safe, and I just fell in love with the place. The freedom, the people here in Central America and Latin America in general are very open, kind, sort of fun-loving. They're a lot like Irish people, except they've a lot better weather down here. I'd like to say better-looking women, but that wouldn't go down too well at all. But it's a great place. So, and mostly what now? I live in Panama now. I've been a full-time resident here since 2005. My wife is Mexican. My kids are born here, and like Liberland, the country here has no interest or of controlling its citizens. There's no welfare system here. There's a very high threshold on taxes. Most people don't pay any taxes. So I'll leave it at that for now, Adam, and maybe you can ask me another question. I hope that answers what you were asking me.
Yeah, that's really, it's good to hear because, again, as we discussed before the call, I had always heard good things about Panama, but nothing specific. And so that information, I find it very valuable. So thank you for sharing. Other thing that ran through my head just now is you have Mexican Irish children living in Panama. So that's very unique. Tell us about, I mean, do your kids have like 3 passports, or what does that look like?
They have 2. And we're working on the 3rd, and probably the 4th will be the Liberland.
The Liberland, yeah.
Good question, yeah. So we all have a Irish passport, Panamanian passport. My wife actually has 3, so she's got more than anyone. But we haven't, as a family, lived in Mexico. But I think we're entitled to apply for the Mexican one, or at least the kids are. So yeah, exactly. It's a very, it's a very good idea. Also, I call it planting flags, and for example, I do but not all of my banking in Belize. You mentioned Belize. My mortgage for my home in Panama is with a bank in Belize. The business we have in Panama is registered in offshore. So I think it's a good idea, whether with passports, with residencies, with banking, and with business, to not be in the one place, to be sort of diversified across everything if you can, and it's not expensive. It just takes a little bit of time, and you'd be surprised what other citizenships you might, people especially in North America, might be entitled to. Italy and Ireland, for example, is by bloodline. So if you have a father or grandfather or grandmother born in Italy or Ireland, you can get Irish citizenship as well, so it's worth checking these things out.
Absolutely. You're living the sovereign lifestyle for sure.
It feels like it does. I mean, I'll tell you one thing, Adam. When I left Europe, it got into the stage, I was actually living in Germany, that I used to be scared of coming home of my mailbox, because there was a letter from the government at least once a week, if not twice a week, and it was always bad news. They always wanted something. In the 14 years I've been in Panama, I don't think of, other than maybe a policeman on the road here and there, I haven't come in contact with a government official, and that suits me perfectly well, because there's no situation sort of bad enough that the government can't make any worse. I think I really believe in decentralization and as little governance as possible, because I believe the private sector, anything the government can attempt to do, I think the private sector can do better. Now, I don't think we've had maybe the capability of doing that before, but I think with blockchain and cryptocurrencies and stuff coming in, I think we're moving into a place where sort of everything that can be decentralized probably will be. Why? Because it can be done better. It can be more competitive and more open and more. Yeah, that's gone a little bit away from Liberland, but again, blockchain and less governance, I think is where my heart is at and my head.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like Panama is paving the way in certain respect with that idea, and then Liberland again as well. A lot of our ideas and principles are going to be able to pave the way and set an example for hopefully other countries and the entire world to ultimately adopt. That's the exciting thing about what we're doing here. Transitioning now finally to Liberland, you got to tell us, Louis, how did you begin your journey as a Liberlandian?
Okay. Well, I went to Acapulco in Mexico for the first time 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I'd met Jeff Berwick before he sort of invited us to go up. I'd met him. He was road tripping as we do, and I met him in Colombia. I think I'd met him in Panama maybe one time as well, and so I'd heard of him and heard of Acapulco, and when the first time I was there, then people were talking about Liberland, these guys from Liberland, and who were they? And it was a great shift in perspective. That's sort of why I became very attracted to what they were doing, not just the ideas, but I think it's just great to challenge myself, because after meeting these guys in Mexico, I had a real shift in consciousness about, well, what does make a country? Who decides what a country is? Who's got the right to say this is a country and this is not? So I love the idea that it challenges your sort of beliefs, and I wanted to spread that message as well, because I don't know where it'll all end up, but I just know that if we get enough people more aware of being able to challenge, because I feel Europe, and I don't know how it's in the States, but it's just like people are unconscious. It's like they're asleep and they just think all of these things always existed and always did, and the government is here for this and that. And even really, really smart people and creative people are sort of asleep in this comfortably numb type of mode. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And not challenging the status quo, and it's just, I don't know. I mean, it's just strange to me that, we should always try to do better, I think, and challenge things. And so anyway, I don't know if that answers it, but that's what I loved about these guys are, in a very rigorously honest way, getting people to ask themselves, what is a country? Well, who are you to tell me this is what a country is and who is it? Yeah,
absolutely. There seems to be somewhat of an awakening happening right now that because of the internet really is spreading from what I can see. I'm 28, so I haven't been through everything here in life. It seems like everything is growing exponentially, including the voice of what we would call freedom. And this podcast is a perfect example. It's inspiring for me right now just to have you on the show and hearing the way you think and your thoughts and your worldviews, because, it allows, I would say, people like myself and other listeners that we have and people out there to realize, wow, we aren't alone in sometimes questioning and wondering, what could life be like if we started doing things differently. Thank you for sharing your story.
I think you got it. I would have said exactly the same thing. I mean, here we are, you're in Newfoundland, I'm in Panama, I'm Irish, you grew up in Ohio and you moved around a bit. 20, 30 years ago, we probably would never have met, but we might have had the same worldview or the same restlessness maybe of, is this the way it's always going to be? Has it always been this way? Can we change it? But I think this possibility is going to, it'll sort of manifest and manifest. And I've always been an optimist, but it's just a really strong feeling at the moment on my side is, wow, I can't wait to see where we're going to be in 3 years or 5 years or 10 years. I think we're really moving in a good direction, and with blockchain and with software and, Liberland, I don't think you can stop it, I mean, they'll try. I don't think it can be stopped.
Right. I'm curious now, tell us, I guess, a little bit about what you're working on with Liberland there in Panama. I know you guys have had some pretty remarkable meetups. I think I've seen them on Facebook and stuff. So what are you guys working on in Panama?
Okay, well, there's quite a few Liberland, followers here, but people that'll be into. Great thing about Panama, first of all, is why it's attracting people here is it's a very free place to be, So it's, people like digital nomads and stuff are sort of, not everybody knows about it, but those that do are finding their way here. So there is a community, and I guess we get to meet each other through sort of blockchain and crypto events and stuff. We're working on purchased up in Cherokee, which is up in the highlands, and we're going to devote some of it to Liberland and to try and, to be honest, it's not all the way, we're not sure quite where it'll end up, but it may well be a sort of Liberland. I mean, its home obviously is in Europe, but its spiritual home can be anywhere. So we'll model the community on Liberland. So you could say it'll be an extension of Liberland. I mean, we still got to talk with Veet a bit more. One of the reasons we haven't sort of broadcasted too much is we just had an election here 2-3 weeks ago, and the new president here takes over in 5 years. Or sorry, the term runs for 5 years. Mm-hmm. So for the last sort of year or 18 months that I've sort of been actively promoting Liberland, there's not much point in doing too much in any country in Latin America when you have an election coming, because that government is going out. They never elect the same administration twice. It's never happened. So any minister or any people you're talking to, they're of no value to you, because no matter what they try to do, they're going to be out of a job in the next 6 months or a year anyway. So we've sort of been teeing a lot of things up for this new government. And I've already met with a guy who'll be a sort of vice minister of agriculture, and we're actually hoping we can get President Veet invited to the inauguration of the new president here, and that'll be the beginning of Liberland if we can get. So the next 3 to 5 years is when we want to it's with this current administration coming in, it's our opportunity to sort of put Liberland on the map here as well. I
Cool.
would say though, Panama's probably closest thing to Liberland's philosophies and lifestyle than any other country in the world. I don't know of any other one. There may be. So this is a good model to work with. There's great alignment between Liberland and Panama.
Yeah, I really like that, and it's you're slowly sales pitching me here to come visit Panama. I think it's going to happen now that I'm getting this awareness. So, Louis, you went into it a little bit. Can you tell us more about your professional background?
Sure. Well, I'm a salesman.
There we go.
Everybody is really, right?
Right.
Everybody is. I mean, everybody's selling something, you know. But I would say when I left Ireland, I was very young. I was 18, 19, and I worked in Germany with BMW actually in car sales.
Okay.
But I've worked towards getting more and more independent without. The very first job I had was sort of in a corporate structure, and I didn't enjoy it at all. I didn't like it, the politics of it, and the ego and stuff. And that's, I think, why I've settled in Panama is I can be sort of more independent here. So the two businesses, if you will, that I'm involved are three. One is we bought land up in Cherokee, which we are going to create a community where we're going to build homes, sort of for, I want to say expats, but what I mean is digital nomads, expats, even retirees, or just, you know, people that have been fortunate enough to make some money and are traveling the world. And then the other project we have is agriculture, which is we have some hydroponic greenhouses from Spain, and we're growing. We're just under construction with one, and we want to grow strawberries. And then the final one, which is I do tours. I bring in people that are interested in Panama. I'll bring them on a tour, whether that's a private tour, like individually, confidential, or I can even do groups as well and show them the country. It's, you know, we've 1,000 miles of Pacific Ocean. We've another 800 of Caribbean. We've got cooler mountain areas. So it packs a sort of good punch for the size of the country. And it's very, very safe, tax-free, you know. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Yeah, who knows? We might have some people signing up for tours here in a matter of minutes when we get to the portion of the show where we get your contact information. Yeah, I mean, what's an average flight cost from say like a major U.S. city, for example? So say like from I don't know, Atlanta, New York, L.A.
Between sort of $600 and $800 return.
Okay.
If you're closer, you know, Miami and anywhere further, maybe, you know, probably 400 or 500. But yeah, I've people actually, quite a few people who come here for the winter, like the winter up north. I mean, so they come to Panama December and stay till April. And, you know, if they don't like the cold weather or sort of had enough of the cold weather. So, you know, I think more and more, you know, traditionally North Americans, or maybe not this generation, but the previous generation, if they're lucky enough to be able to afford maybe a holiday home, or they probably went to Florida or Arizona or California. But, you know, even the baby boomer generation and the next generation coming in, they're more traveled and more educated. So they'll think nothing. I mean, you yourself mentioned Belize. You've been there, spent some time there. Mm-hmm. So, you know, there's like Colombia is another great country. You've also mentioned you've been there. So I see a sort of with technology and education, I see more and more people from North America and Europe coming to places in the world like this, which are not as controlling and can, you know, like I've met quite a few Americans here who a little bit older than me, even, who are probably in their 50s and their 60s. And I've heard quite a few, more than one, say that Panama reminds them of America when they grew up there, when it was just, you know, a lot freer and easier and kids can play on the street. I'm not quite sure what they mean because I didn't grow up in America. But I know the feeling they're talking about is, right. You know, they grew up in one place and it's completely evolved and transformed into something else.
Right. And yeah, I think I know what you're saying by what they say about the freedom and the ability to feel comfortable in the environment there. I haven't been there yet, but I know one place that I picked that up on quickly was also, well, you mentioned you were in Germany a little bit. I don't know if you've been there recently. I haven't been there, but even Tokyo, I know I was shocked when I saw 6, 7, 8-year-old kids hopping on the subway to go to school by themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? I was just in Europe again, and Holland and Norway, and yeah, kids are cycling off to school by themselves, and that's really all. Isn't that the way it should be? But it's very very safe here. I mean, there's, I guess, crime would be, there's no like major like cartels or gangsters or something like that. There's some petty crime in certain areas,
Right.
but for the most part, it's very, very safe. Another interesting thing I think about here is Panama itself is only 100 years old. It used to be part of Colombia before the canal was built. And then the U.S. administration ran the canal, and it's only the last 20 years that Panama has sort of really, really taken off. It's come into its own. And one of the things you notice when you come here, there's people from all over the world here, a lot of North Americans, Canadians, Europeans, but there's also a lot of Russians, Brazilians, Lebanese, Israelis, and nobody here has a history. In Ireland and in the Middle East, they're fighting over things that happened 600 years ago.
Right.
So there's no history here between people, and people are really here to do business and live a good life. So you've no sort of extremism, or it's all just a good mix, of travelers as well. I mean, in order to get yourself here, the reason you might come, Adam, is you're already a sort of a traveler, and you've got a bit of curiosity about you. So that's the type of people that are coming here, and that's the type of people also that are finding Liberland.
Guys, if you're listening, I'm getting the sales pitch from a BMW luxury salesman here. So I like it though. I love it. And I think I'm definitely gonna be visiting eventually. So we'll keep in touch. We're at the end of our interview here, Louis. This has been a lot of fun. What's the best way for anyone listening to get in touch with you?
I'm happy to share. Look, we talked a little bit of business. Primarily, my motive is to if I have any information or experience I can share with somebody that will help them, I'm happy to do that. And it doesn't come with a price tag. I'm not, you look after people and everything else looks after itself after that. So I'm happy to help anybody out in any way possible. And I'm not looking for any price tag on it or anything, but probably by email, which is Louis O'Connor, LOUISOCONNOR @protonmail.com.
Perfect. And you get the Proton Mail, so I know you're already one step ahead of whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, privacy, isn't it,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Louis, thank you, everyone. This has been episode 30 of the Liberland Show. We were joined by John Louis O'Connor, the General Consul of Panama. I'm your host, Adam J. Carswell. Thank you for tuning in, and we will catch you in the next episode. Guys, if you enjoy listening to the Liberland Show, be sure to check out my own personal podcast called Dream Chasers. On Dream Chasers, we interview individuals with supernatural amounts of potential based on early success in their careers. Go ahead and do a web search on it. Again, my name is Adam Carswell, Adam J. Carswell. Go ahead, type in Dream Chasers, and it should pop up for you to listen there on any platform, YouTube, Facebook, Spotify, iTunes, etc. Thanks for tuning in to the Liberland Show, and we will catch you in the next episode. Thanks.